The NFL season is upon us. That means survivor pools are in full swing, and we are all still alive in our survivor pools. I am Statsational for the Sharp app. This is Scratching and Surviving. Most of you have been here before. You've been with me for years now, and what we do here, for those who are new, is analyze survivor pools in the NFL, unlike any other channel you are going to find here on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter. A lot of people are going to give their opinions on who they think is going to win this game. Maybe they like a divisional opponent over a non-divisional or vice versa. They don't want to take a home team. There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to get on these other platforms that aren't necessarily important to you winning a survivor pool. What we're going to do here is break down survivor pools in a more analytical way and use some game theory to hopefully get you across the finish line to win your pool. There have been a ton of people who watch these videos who have won in the past. I know a lot of them have hit me up and are hoping that we were going to be doing this series again this year. And for you guys, just want to say we are back. So hopefully you can win your pool again with me. I love seeing it when you guys take down the big money, whether it's $100, $10,000, $50,000, whatever the amount is. I love seeing you guys win. So hopefully I can take one down here with you. I've got 10 entries in the DraftKings $1,000 survivor pool on top of a bunch of other pools I'm in, friends and family type of stuff. So we'll see how far we can get this year. Hopefully we can take down a big prize together. Before I get started, I did mention the Sharp app, and the Sharp app this is the channel that you're watching the Sharp app channel. And if you're unfamiliar with the Sharp app, the app is going to help you become a sharper, smarter, better. We've got a bunch of tools inside of the app to do that. Specifically, I think the best thing that we have on the app is now a new feature, something that we didn't have last year when I was doing this podcast. It came about, I think we launched this in about June. It's the arbitrage tool. I'm going to just show you what that looks like. And let's bring up the screen. Now, I'm using a different platform here this year, so if I'm a little slower than I normally am, bear with me. But here's the ARB tool, and I just want to show you guys how it works really quickly. If you're unfamiliar with arbitrage betting, the way that works is you can bet the same side or opposite sides of the same bet. So, for instance, you're seeing the Lions-Packers here. What the bet is Isaac Tesla, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, player receptions, over 1.5 or under 1.5. You could take that if you have the Hard Rock and you have BetMGM, both of these. You could basically take this bet at plus 145 for the over on the Hard Rock and minus 125 on the under over at BetMGM, which guarantees you a profit on this bet. You could change how much you're willing to risk on each of these bets. If you change that to $100, you'll see it's going to suggest betting 7 that over and $100 on the under to lock in your profit. And of course, you could change. We've got a ton of sports books. You could change which book is actually the book that you are using, and then you only want to obviously use the books that you have access to, and it'll give you all of the best arbitrage situations that are available to you. So I just wanted to show you guys that quickly before we jumped into our video here for today. So we've got the season starting in a little bit more than 24 hours now as I'm recording this. I want to go over some of the rules, my personal rules to Survivor really quickly, and then we'll jump into this week. For those of you who've been with me before, you kind of know this spiel, and I've got a whole video. I'll link down to the video where I did a little bit more of a deeper dive a few years ago on how I like to play these pools. But for those who are new, I suggest definitely watching that just so you get an idea of my mindset and where I'm coming from. But kind of quickly, I'll just go over a few. I like to get in about 2 to 5% of all entries into a pool. So if there are 100 people in my pool, I'd love to have anywhere between 2 and 5 entries in that pool. Obviously, the more entries I have, the better chance I have of taking down the pool. The other thing is really read the rules in your pool, right? So for those of you who play in Circa, and if you're unfamiliar with Circa, it has now become the biggest survivor pool out there. I did not get in it this year. I've been in it in years past, just didn't have the chance to get out to Vegas. And then, of course, you need a proxy out in Vegas to put the plays in for you. You need to be out there or have a proxy. So if you don't have that, and these proxies are getting really expensive with the amount that they're taking, it does for the most part, become a little bit it becomes sub EV or negative EV really to play with some of the cost that these proxies have. So that's another story for another time. They've also got the big $100,000 pool at Circa, which me and my business partner in my sports betting and DFS, we were looking to get into that as well this year, but just really was going to be difficult for us to do that and get out to Vegas and get that done and have a proxy that we trust and were comfortable with the amount that they were charging. Are not in that, but we will be in, like I said, the $1,000. We got 10 entries in that $1,000 pool over at DraftKings. You may want to check that one out. When you watch this, there'll probably still be time to get yourself in that pool. And plus, I've got a bunch of other ones. What you want to do, like, you want to read the rules for these pools. Now, Circa, which I was bringing up, Circa's got the holidays where you must make a pick on Thanksgiving, either the Thanksgiving or that Friday. After Thanksgiving, you have to pick a team from those 4 games as well as that weekend. And the same thing goes for Christmas. They make you play, if there's Christmas games, you have to make a pick on Christmas Day. I haven't even looked this year. I assume there's Christmas Day games, but in last year, and I assume this year, Circa will make you play the holiday games on top of that week. So essentially it adds 2 weeks to the season. Plus you only have a very limited amount of games that you can take on those days. So just adding to the difficulty of the pool and surviving the entire way. And of course, that's their goal, is to get as few winners as possible. Ideally, one winner. Just looks better for the pool if one person takes down that big prize. They've got, I think, about 15,000 entries in that pool so far this year. That would be $15 million. So they are going to set a record this year for the pool. But that is, one of the key things is really read the rules for your pool, because I can't tell you how many times you don't realize that you have to make 2 picks in week 4 and you really didn't plan ahead for that, or you have to make 2 picks when it gets below a certain threshold and you didn't plan for it. And I've done it before myself because I get in so many pools that I don't realize necessarily some of the quirky rules. So really important, read the rules. I kind of alluded to this before, I believe I did, but road teams against home teams, divisional against non-divisional. You will hear this all the time in Survivor pools. Guys, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the point spread, the money line, or that point spread. They're kind of one in the same. And I'll look at money lines because they're much easier to convert a money line into implied odds and implied probability than it is to just look at the point spread. So I like to look at the money lines. But my point in bringing this up is a lot of people will look at home against road and they'll say, well, I don't want to take a home team. Or I don't want to take a road team. They'll pass on a 7-point road favorite and take a 4-point home favorite because they have this, there's a theory in their mind that home teams win more often. Well, the home teams do win more often. That home field advantage, by the way, has diminished precipitously because, I don't want to get too deep into this, but the reason there's a home field advantage in all sports is really, it's almost all associated with officiating. And the officials tend to officiate games for home teams more favorably. And it has nothing to do with that they like the home teams or anything like that. It's crowd noise influences calls. This has been proven in some analysis and some studies that have been done. It's why basketball globally had the best and the highest home court advantage, when in basketball there's really no strategic advantage to be the home team. The reason being the fans were closer. Where baseball, where you do have a strategic advantage, you get to bat last, the fans being further away from the field of play actually had the lowest of all home field advantages. The NFL always had a pretty good home field advantage. It was always about 3 points on the point spread. That's dipped down to maybe about 2 points. And the reason being is the more replay in the game and the more automation, we're taking that human element away from the referees. When you do that, you're going to get closer to a 50-50 home road split. Now in the NFL, because of crowd noise, it does become a little bit more difficult for offenses to execute and hear each other, making calls, making audibles, things like that. So that's going to increase that just a little bit, and that's where you're going to get home field advantage. But it has nothing to do with sleeping in your own bed, because the studies have shown when the Clippers play the Lakers, they had that same home field advantage, and they're certainly not staying in a hotel. Same thing with the Nets and the Knicks, things like that. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but just know that the point spread is or the money line is really what we need to focus on. That's got everything baked in. Injuries are baked into there. whether or not the team's home or the road, the divisional matchup, their history with that team. That's all baked into the line. So I don't like to get into too deep of an analysis on the actual game for a survivor pool. I'll do that when I'm looking at my model and I'm actually making bets against the market. That's when I have to really try to be better and sharper than the market. But in a survivor pool, it's not going to be that, my model is not going to be that far off of where the market is enough that it's going to change how I'm going to play Survivor. So the easiest thing to do is really look at the money lines and the spreads, and that's going to dictate the direction and the path that you're going to go. Ideally, you'd love to be able to take the biggest favorite you possibly can all the way out for 18 weeks. And that's, of course, going to be impossible because you're going to have the same team be the highest favorite for that week. The better teams, the Phillies and Kansas City's, Buffalo, they're going to be a big favorite several times throughout the course of the year. So it's always going to be difficult for you to pick the biggest favorite each and every week. There's another site called Survivor Atlas. Let me bring that up for you guys. I met this guy. I was at the live final for PGA for DraftKings this year in Minneapolis at the 3M tournament, and I met a gentleman who started this particular website called Survivor Atlas. Let's see if I can get it up here for you. And this is a really cool feature. Now, there's a lot of cool things on here. I advise you guys kind of check out survivoratlas.com, but see this autofill. And this here shows you exactly what the optimal path is as of right now. Now, we know this is going to change. Injuries are going to happen. What we expect the team to be is not going to necessarily be what that team is. But if we played it now, this would be the path. This would be the path to take the highest favorites that you possibly can for the entire season. Okay, so it is suggesting Denver this week, Baltimore next week, Buffalo, then Detroit, and so on and so forth here, Minnesota against Cleveland. For fun, I just kind of went through this, took all these percentages, and it tells you what the percentage is for each of these teams to win that game based on what the line is going to be. To get all the way to week 18 and to win in week 18, you would have, and this is playing the most optimal path possible, you'd have a 0.3% chance to get all the way. So you really have to temper your expectations, right? You have a 0.3% chance. That means if you played one entry every year in a survivor pool, the odds are pretty good you could go your lifetime without making it a full 18 weeks. Now, I've done it before. I've made it 18 weeks, and certain years it's just going to happen, and you're not going to be the only one. Typically, when you make it 18 weeks in a pool, especially in a pool that's not that large, there's going to be a lot of other people probably made it 18 weeks. And when I say not that large, I mean like maybe 500 to 1,000 people, 1,500 in the pool, which is a large size pool. But if you have 30 to 50 people who have advanced all the way to week 18, that probably means that there weren't a lot of huge major upsets on the big favorites that year for most weeks. And that's why people were able to advance. So what I'm saying is it's going to be difficult to even do that on your own. So what we do here is we're trying to find not just the optimal path, but what we're trying to do is get you in a situation where we can build the most equity quickly. Now, there's a website that I write for called Survivor Sweats. And now if you're in Circa or any of these big pools, you can actually sell shares of your pool in that. It's like it's a market, like a secondary market. And that's really important in these big pools. If you can build equity and then sell some shares, it's going to be able to level off the variance that you're going to have year over year, because there's a high amount of variance, obviously, in these pools. They're a relatively short period of time that we get to play them. We're playing a short number of entries. So over the course of our life, if we just played one entry in a pool every single year, the odds are pretty good we'll never make it all the way to 18 weeks. The odds are really good, depending on how many people are in your pool, that you may never win that pool. So what we want to do is when we get equity, we want to try to capture some of that equity that we can. That would be on a site like Survivor Sweats. Now, we don't all have that opportunity, obviously. Maybe we have that opportunity in certain pools where when we get down to a number, sub 10, sub 5, whatever it is, where we can do something similar, where we'll start cutting deals with people in the pool. That's all something you guys can ask me about. And one of my favorite things about doing this podcast and this show is you guys leave a ton of questions down in the comments. I answer all of them. If I miss one, it's only because I didn't see it. I answer them all as quickly as I possibly can. So leave a comment. If you're going to have different rules in your pool, you've got questions about anything specific to your pool or really anything sports betting in general, you could always feel free to leave a comment down below. I've been a professional sports bettor for 10 plus years now. Yeah, though getting close to 15 years, professional DFS player as well. And I built a lot or helped build a lot of the tools over at the Sharp app that's going to help you with sports betting. So if you have any questions about the Sharp app, by the way, if you use code SURVIVOR, that's going to get you 15% off the Sharp app. You can head over to sharp.app. Sharp.app's going to get you, download that, sign up, use Survivor. That'll get you 15% off. All right, let's dive into this week. As we go along, we'll talk more about strategy. There's not much to really get into when we're in week one. We're all alive. We've all got the same picks out there available to us. Maybe some of you guys are just, in a pool where maybe you have to pick two. I've been in pools where week one you got to pick two. But let's just go under the assumption here that we're picking one pool, and let's check out Survivor Grid. You guys are familiar with Survivor Grid. I like to use Survivor Grid when doing my analysis. Let's take a look at it. We've got this week, you've got Philly here as the largest favorite on the board. Let me see if that is actually true. Yeah, they are still the largest favorite. The way Survivor Grid is going to do this is slightly different when it comes to actually picking the win percentage number. Let me go over this. You guys are unfamiliar with Survivor Grid, but EV, it's their own proprietary calculation, but it's essentially going to be, it's going to take the win percentage into account. It's going to take P percentage, which is pick percentage. It's going to come up with an EV. We'll get into more of that in a bit. Win percentage is based off of the line, and when I show you guys my spreadsheet, mine's going to be a little bit more accurate than this, but it's going to be very close to their win percentage. P percentage is what we're looking for from the site. It's the most valuable thing that Survivor Grid gives us, and this is being taken from pools across multiple platforms. Yahoo, you've got Office Football Pool, Splash, all these sites that they're drawing from, ESPN, right? And they're looking at a total. So there's different rules in these pools, so it's not always going to be accurate, but we do want to get a fair idea of where the market is, and this does help us out a bit. So when we look at this week, let's go over our spreadsheet that you guys are familiar with as well. We'll go over the spreadsheet and you'll see how I'm looking at this. All right, so Denver and Philly, the two best options on the slate. This win percentage is based on the money line. What I do is I take the midpoint of the Pinnacle line. Why Pinnacle? It's considered to be the sharpest sports book out there. I head over to the Sharp app, and what I do is I look for the I'll actually show you here. I look for the midpoint, right? So I take the underdogs line, and then I take the line for the favorite, and I just take a midpoint of that, and that becomes the line. So you'll see here to show you what the app looks like, and I just go in the app. This is the app version. What I was showing you before on the ARBs was the web version, but yeah, you could just change the book. I change it to Pinnacle, and then I figure out what the midpoint is. Very simple, right? So this is really, I love the way our UI looks, really clean. And you'll see here, you can get all of the lines just at Pinnacle, and that's going to show you pretty much the sharpest line out there, and that's what I use. So we look at the midpoint line, okay? And let's bring up the website again, or the spreadsheet again. We're looking for that midpoint. That gets us the win probability. That gets us the money line, which gets us the win probability. We do that calculation and come up with win probability. FV is future value. I'm punching that in. Now, I'm getting that. The way Survivor Atlas does it is the same way I do it. So I'm getting this number off of Survivor Atlas this year. And pick percentage, we're just basically replicating what they have over at Survivor Grid. And what my spreadsheet does is figure out how much weight do we want on future. So at 0% future weight, all this is going to show us is the teams with the highest win probability are going to be the best teams. So Philly is going to be better here than Denver because we don't care about future. When we look at future, by the way, the future value, what I want to note is the greater the negative or the lower the number is in value, so minus 122 here for Baltimore, that signifies the most future value. Because what this number is doing is adding up all of what we are projecting their future lines to be. So cumulatively, Baltimore is going to be a minus 122 favorite over their 17 games that they're going to play this year. And that's, of course, as of now. Things change. Lamar gets hurt. This number is going to change drastically. So the team here that we have that is a favorite, and they are a slight favorite, is Indianapolis, has the least amount of future value. So if they were a larger favorite, maybe we would consider them in larger pools. We'll get to that here right now. But when I have it at future value 0, which type of pools are we looking at where 0% is going to be important? That's going to be for small pools. Why? Because we don't really care about future value as much because there may not be all that much of a future to go. I always like to look at things in extremes. If I were in a pool with just me and my buddy, and we were playing Survivor, and we just had to survive whoever could survive the longest. Typical Survivor pool. 2 people. You would be crazy just not to take the largest favorite each week and hope that that big favorite wins, and let your opponent go and try and get cute. Let your opponent take a team like Arizona when you would clearly take Philly in that situation. Maybe Denver, you're going to see how the lines move. But right now, as of right now, Philly being the largest favorite, you wouldn't care that they have some of the most future value in the entire NFL this year. You don't care because you may not ever need to use them again. So you want to take the largest favorite. Basically, if everything went off if it went off as right now, you'd have close to an 80% chance of winning yours. And let's say your opponent took Arizona, they would have a 72% chance to win theirs. Not a massive difference. Both teams probably win. But if you continue to give yourself that slight edge, you're playing a 50-50 game because it's you against him or her, and you're giving yourself a 7% edge. That's the equivalent of if we were just going to flip coins and we were going to bet on heads or tails, and they gave you a slight edge, like, hey, listen, we're going to play $1 a flip, but if you win, I'll give you $1.10. If I win, you just give me $1. Well, that game suddenly becomes hugely profitable for you, and you want to play it over and over. So if you can just get a slight edge, that's not saying that you're necessarily going to win, because it's short term, right? Just like the coin flip, you may not necessarily win because you're getting paid more. You can easily call heads all 10 flips, and tails comes out 7 times, and now you've lost. So in the short term, you could lose, but if you play this game 1,000 times, you're going to come out profitable. Same thing here. If we play long enough, we're going to beat our opponent more often than not. Right? So we could actually figure this out mathematically. Let's make the numbers easy. If we had an 80% chance to win and our opponent had a 70% chance to win, what's the probability that we win this week? Well, what you do is you have a 30% chance of your opponent losing, and you have an 80% chance of winning. You'd multiply those 2 percentages. So you basically have a 24% chance of winning the pool right that week. You'd have an 80% times 30% gives you a 24% chance. What's the probability your opponent wins? Well, you've got a 20% chance of losing. They have a 70% chance of winning. You multiply those 2, they've got a 14% chance to win the pool this week. So you could see I'd much rather have a 24% chance to win the pool as opposed to a 14% chance to win the pool. So we want to give ourselves that slight advantage. And when we have fewer people in the pool, we're going to play with less future value, right? So I think I kind of gave you my answer. If I'm in a pool here with very few people, I'm really going to want Philly. You're going to get the added bonus of people. Really, this should be a 50-50 split, right? If we're not worried about future value, these are about the same probabilities. We should have about a 50-50 split in pick percentage if we're in a small pool. That's not going to be the case. More people are going to take Denver because they know, hey, I could save Philly for the future. So while you will be giving up some future value, and the more people in your pool, the less you want to do that. But the fewer people in your pool, you don't mind giving up some of that future value to get some of the leverage that you're going to get here. And leverage is really important. So you're going to have leverage in the fact that more people are going to be on Denver. It's about a 50-50 probability on each 50-50 split that one wins or that one wins, one loses, right? The odds are good that they'll both win. But we now have leverage on the field by taking Philly. So in small pools, I really like Philly here. The larger the pool gets, then you're going to want to start to look at Denver more heavily. So future value or future future value weight at 0%. When I bump this up to 100%, this is going to be for larger size pools. What you see is these numbers change, and I like to leave this at 100 on the videos just because this then winds up being like a percentage. So 55% of your entries should go to Arizona, 45% should go to Denver. That's if you just follow the sheet to the T, right? And you're going to go ahead and you're going to play how you want to play. If you wanted to take 3 unique teams, let's say you had 100 entries in a pool just like this. Maybe you want to take 6 different teams, and this would be the breakdown for 6 different teams. Again, you're going to do it how you wish to do it, but we're going to, obviously, if we're going to play 6 unique teams, we're going to be adding new teams into the mix. So at 100% future value, Denver and Arizona become the 2 top options. Why? We've got very little future value with Arizona, obviously less future value with Denver than we do with Philly, and just based on the sheer win probability being so high, we're still going to want to take a Denver over maybe some of these other teams that don't have as much future value, like, let's say, a Jacksonville or a Pittsburgh, because the difference in the win probability is so great. But once we get to 3 teams, now we want to start considering Jacksonville in the mix, okay? Because we've got such little future value on Jacksonville. You've got, if you went to 4 teams, you would bring Washington into the mix. If we added a 5th team, Pittsburgh becomes one of the teams that we're looking at, and then a 6th team, Cincinnati. All right, I'm going to head back to Survivor Grid, and we'll take a quick look there, but I want to go over the spreadsheet a little bit deeper. If you're in a massive, large pool, maybe like Circa, you may not want to take Denver or Philly. You want to really start looking at some more long shot type of plays like in Arizona or a Jacksonville, and you'll see these numbers will actually skew a bit in Circa. It'll be hard to get these numbers totally accurate to what the Circa pool is. I described that before because everyone's in different types of pools. You've also got some sharper people in Circa, so you'll see teams like Arizona, Jacksonville will get a higher percentage of picks than necessarily on pools on the whole. And we'll go over that. I think Survivor Atlas is going to have some pick percentage. They'll have some projections on where the picks are going to be in Circa specifically, and we'll go over that as the year goes on. I don't want to get too into the weeds here on this one. The first episode is always the longest. These are usually about 15 to 20-minute videos, but giving you guys an overview on how I go about things on week 1 is always what we like to do, and then we'll shorten these down. They'll be a lot quicker. So let's take a look now at Survivor Grid quickly. And what I like to do, I don't like to look too far out, but what I do like to do is maybe look just 2 or 3 weeks out. Why do I not want to look too far out? Well, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Jalen Hurts gets injured in the game tomorrow night. I don't know, right? So when you say, well, I'm saving them for week 8 against the Giants, that's great, but we just don't know if that game against maybe the Giants are just going to be way better than we ever thought, and Hurts gets injured, and now this is a 1-point spread and not a 10.5-point spread, right? I don't know if it's going to happen in this case, but it will happen on some of these games. You will see. But I could be a little bit more confident maybe in week 2, week 3. There's less probability of Hurts being injured, less probability of Bo Nix getting injured, right? So I can just look out a couple of weeks. And I do this because I don't want to get caught up. Like if there was a situation where Denver had a cakewalk in week 2, that's going to give me more reason to get on Philly, right? If they were going to be the team, let's say Denver was going to be the highest favorite next week, that would give me more reason to get on Philly. But when I look at it here, and the nice thing on Survivor Grid is I can sort here by what we think the future line is going to be on next week's games. And really none of the teams that we're looking at outside of Arizona, which is like the 6th choice on the board, are even going to be a team that we're looking at next week. If we look at week 3, none of these teams are really teams that we're looking at in week 3. So I'm really not too concerned here about the next couple of weeks. I'm not going to find myself backed into a corner by taking the wrong team. Again, week 1, it's a lot less tricky than other weeks because we've got everyone available to us. So if I am in a large pool, what are my options? It's really going to be Philly, Denver, Arizona, right? Washington. Those are your best options this week. Now, why are we not taking Washington? The pool doesn't really like, or the spreadsheet doesn't really like Washington, is because they've got a lot of future value, or more future value, like we could see with Washington in week 3, they're a 7.5 point favorites. Now, they're not going to be a massive favorites any other week, at least projected, but they do have some value here, certainly in week 3 and in the future where it's going to start getting trickier. So it's not a team that I necessarily am interested in. If I've got 100 entries, I'm going to be maybe sprinkling 1 or 2 in. But let's just talk about the teams that we really want to focus on. That's Philly, Denver. There's no obstacles here. Arizona, actually, maybe a little bit if we get down to, week 5. Let's see what week 5 looks like. I mean, they're only the 5th choice. I'm not going to get concerned about that. So we've got really no obstacles that I'm all that concerned about on any of these top picks. Jacksonville is a pick. I think if you're in a super large pool, you've got to consider potentially taking a Jacksonville. Carolina, I know you're going to tell me it's scary. I get it. Bryce Young has looked a lot better coming into the end of the year. Again, I don't like to break down these games and I'm not trying to analyze it. I'm just looking at the point spread. Do I think Jacksonville's a lock? Absolutely not. None of these teams are locks, right? You never know what's going to happen in a game. That's why we don't ever last 18 weeks. But I think Jacksonville in large pools, we're going to build up equity. This is what it's all about, right? If we look at Pittsburgh, not exactly a big favorite here, only a 57.5% chance. I think on my spreadsheets, it's going to be a little bit different. We've got a 58% chance to win that game, but very little future value for Pittsburgh. So if you're in a large pool, maybe you want to look at a Pittsburgh. It's really the way I'm looking at it. There's not too much to get into here this week. It's going to, as always, be specific to your pool. So I'm going to need you guys to leave a comment down below if you want to ask a particular question. I'm always more than happy to do that. I apologize for the length of the video today. We will be a lot more concise, 15 to 20 minutes on these videos in the future, but I want to give you guys a pretty good background, what we're looking at this season, and hopefully we can survive together and win our pool, take down all that big money that we're looking to do. So, guys, again, I appreciate you being back for this year. Check out the Sharp app, and we'll be back next week, hopefully scratching and surviving.